So today we are unpacking one of the most famous stories in human history. But listen, we aren't just doing a simple read-through of a children's book here. We're actually dissecting the anatomy of a classic fable. We're taking a really close look at The Boy Who Cried Wolf, and we're going to explore not just the story itself, but the absolutely fascinating psychological mechanics of why this specific tale has stuck around across so many cultures, languages, and centuries. We're going to see how this ancient story literally aligns perfectly with our modern understanding of how human brains develop a moral compass from a super young age. It's essentially a deep dive into how a really simple story about a shepherd, some sheep, and a wolf manages to teach us some of the most complex, hard-hitting lessons about human trust. Let's get right into the explainer.
Okay, let's be real for a second. Have you ever told just a tiny, harmless little lie strictly because you were bored? You know, maybe you totally exaggerated a weekend story to your friends just to get a bigger reaction out of them. Or maybe you pulled a practical joke around the house just to break up the monotonous routine of a really slow afternoon. It's a deeply relatable human thing, right? We naturally crave engagement. And actually, that connects us perfectly to the protagonist of our story today, because his upcoming dilemma doesn't start from a place of malice or evil intent. Not at all. It starts with that exact same painfully familiar feeling. Pure, unfiltered, agonizing boredom.
All right, meet our main character, Benny the shepherd. Now, Benny has what might honestly be the most peaceful and excruciatingly dull job on the entire planet. From early morning till noon, and from high noon until the sun finally goes down, his one and only responsibility is sitting on a quiet, sunny green hill, watching fluffy white sheep stand completely still. That's it. There are no smartphones to scroll through, no books to read, no friends to hang out with. He is literally just watching grass grow. So he's yawning, he's sighing, and he is desperately looking for absolutely any kind of entertainment to break the silence. And it's that sheer, overwhelming dullness that eventually leads Benny to cook up a rather wicked, sneaky idea just to get a little bit of attention. But before Benny actually goes through with this terrible decision, we need to talk about the collateral damage of what he's about to do. Down on the grass, completely oblivious to his plotting, we have his innocent flock. This features the adorable sheep Wily and Dotty, who are just peacefully grazing, minding their own business. And then, down in the valley below the hill, we have the hardworking, unsuspecting villagers, represented by Farmer Fred. Now, Fred and the rest of the community are busy. They're working together, sweating in the hot sun, doing all the heavy lifting required to keep their village running. They are completely unaware that they're about to become the primary targets of Benny's desperate need for a little afternoon excitement. So, day one arrives. Benny walks right up to the very edge of the hill, cups his hands over his mouth, and just screams his lungs out. "Help! Help! A wolf is chasing the sheep!" Instantly, down in the village, pure panic sets in. Farmer Fred and the villagers drop their heavy tools, their hearts are absolutely pounding, and they rush nonstop up the steep hill with heavy sticks to save Benny and the flock. But later that day, the reality hits. They reach the top, completely out of breath, only to find 0 wolves. It's just Benny laughing his head off at how incredibly fun it was to fool the whole town. Well, Farmer Fred and the villagers are furious. They sternly warn him, do not cry wolf when there is none, and they angrily trudge all the way back down. But Benny, he doesn't learn a thing. Day 2 rolls around, the suffocating boredom comes right back, and the prank repeats. The villagers run up again, muscles aching, only to find the exact same cruel joke. The trust in that village is eroding, and man, it's eroding fast. Now, you might be wondering, why has this specific story about a lying shepherd survived for centuries? Why do we keep telling it to every single new generation? Well, it's because it maps perfectly to Kohlberg's theory of moral development. This is a fascinating psychological framework that shows how children gradually learn right and wrong through very distinct, progressive stages of understanding. You see, young kids don't just automatically grasp abstract concepts like honor or integrity right out of the gate. They take stories at face value. They really need these highly tailored, consequence-driven narratives to guide them through the complex stages of moral reasoning. So this isn't just some random bedtime story. It is literally a foundational tool for early brain development. And fables align directly with these specific developmental stages. For instance, you have the self-interest stage. Think of stories like The Lion and the Mouse, where characters learn all about mutual benefit and negotiation. Then you have social approval, where the whole focus is on learning to build positive relationships and trust. But Benny's deceit? That connects directly to the very first foundational stage,
obedience, and punishment. At this early stage of psychological development, morals are learned purely through direct, unavoidable consequences. Benny isn't about to learn the importance of honesty through a gentle lecture or, a quiet timeout. Oh no, he is going to learn it through a harsh, undeniable consequence and the permanent loss of trust from his community.
This actually ties perfectly into how children's literature is heavily analyzed today. In the Definitive Guide to Modern Storytelling, there's a massive emphasis placed on this concept called moral fortitude. You see, true courage is no longer just defined as physical bravery, like a knight slaying a fire-breathing dragon or a warrior facing down an entire army. Modern heroism is often defined as having the quiet, internal moral fortitude to admit a mistake, or to just tell the truth even when it's deeply embarrassing, unpopular, or difficult. And Benny? He lacks this moral fortitude entirely right now. He prefers the easy, cheap thrill of a lie over the quiet, mature responsibility of the truth.
Meanwhile, back on the hill, the consequences of Benny's complete lack of fortitude are about to catch up with him in a terrifying way. The climax arrives on this gray, really windy evening. From behind the rocky crest of the hill, with hungry, glowing eyes, the real danger finally emerges. Enter Wily Walter the Wolf. He is big, he's incredibly sly, and he is very, very hungry for sheep. The flock instantly scatters in sheer terror, and for the very first time in his life, Benny isn't bored. He is absolutely terrified. The danger is completely real now, and Wooly and Dotty are right in the crosshairs. Benny sprints to the edge of the hill, panic completely gripping his throat, and he screams with every single ounce of strength he has for help.
Now, in Benny's mind, the expectation is crystal clear. He fully expects Farmer Fred and the villagers to come rushing up that hill with their heavy sticks, exactly like they did on day 1 and day 2. He desperately expects to be rescued from this total nightmare. But the reality down in the village? It's grim. Farmer Fred hears the blood-curdling screams echoing down the mountain, but he just pauses, shakes his head in quiet disappointment, and goes right back to his chores. The villagers actively, intentionally ignore Benny. They've been fooled twice before, and honestly, they're just exhausted by his deceit. They assume it's just another one of his cruel, attention-seeking games.
Which brings us to a terrifying absolute 0, because that is the exact number of people who came up that hill to help Benny. 0. Not a single person. Because of his previous lies, he is left completely, utterly alone as Wily Walter viciously attacks. Benny is forced to just stand there, completely frozen and helpless, watching as his beloved sheep, Wooly and Dotty, are taken by the wolf. It's an absolutely devastating consequence. It is the harshest possible reality check a young shepherd could ever face, and it was entirely orchestrated by his own dishonesty.
But here's the thing. Experiencing Benny's terrifying loss from the safety of a book actually does something vital for the reader. It develops what we call cognitive empathy. This is that critical psychological ability to truly understand another person's perspective and feel their deep emotions. As a reader, you feel Benny's sudden, breath-stealing panic, and you feel his ultimate crushing regret as he watches the wolf. And in doing so, your own internal moral compass gets carefully calibrated. Basically, you get to learn the horrific cost of lying without having to actually lose your own flock of sheep to a wolf in the real world. When the villagers finally find Benny weeping all alone on the grassy hill later that evening, they don't offer immediate comfort. Instead, they deliver a hard, undeniable truth about the actual price of lying. You see, a reputation for honesty takes a very long time to build. It requires day after day, year after year of consistent, reliable, good behavior. But a single lie, or in Benny's case, a couple of foolish, thoughtless pranks, can tear that entire reputation down in an absolute instant. Benny didn't just lose Wooly and Dotty to the wolf that day, he lost something that is so much harder to get back. He completely lost the trust of Farmer Fred and his entire community. Which brings us to the timeless moral of this whole story, a lesson that rings just as true today as it did centuries ago. A liar is not believed even when they speak the truth. It's a powerful, sobering reminder that honesty truly is the best policy, because once you break someone's trust, you don't get to decide when they start believing you again. They might just not be there when the metaphorical wolf shows up at your door. So think about the people in your life right now, your friends, your family, your colleagues. How are you choosing to protect the fragile trust they place in you every single day? Keep that question in the back of your mind the next time you're tempted to tell just a tiny little lie. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and I'll catch you next time.